because I live in Detroit, I was able to get tuition-free college through the Detroit Promise. I feel very fortunate working with the Detroit Promise. They were able to afford me so many opportunities. I'm currently studying media production and journalism at University of Michigan Dearborn. I'm looking to take my talents further into the production industry, short films. I love working with people here, and this is where I want to be. And that's why I'm Detroit for life.
Without Project Clean Slate, there is no telling where I would be right now.
It gave him back his life, because once he got the felony, it seemed like life was over.
Being unemployed, being depressed, being a burden. Project Clean Slate helped wipe those things away. I can't say thank you enough. I am now able to work for a reputable airline. Detroit had my back, all because I live in Detroit.
All right.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, but I'll explain that in a second. This is Saeed Khan, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. I am actually broadcasting from the second greatest music city in the world, Motown, of course, being the one, from Manchester, England. So, home of the Smiths, Oasis,
Manchester.
New Order, Joy Division, and a whole, and Rick Astley. So,
Nashville would like a word. That's okay.
Yes, but you know what? When it comes to devotion to this show, never going to give you up, never going to let you down. So here I am.
I remember that song.
Well, that's because at some point in your life, you, like everyone else, Alan, has been Rickrolled.
Rickrolled,
so,
yeah.
There you go. That's what it's called. All right. Well, going around the horn today, we have two of our usual troika of lawyers, Joel Sklar and Bill Seikaly. Steve Fishman is busy with some legal work today, not his own. He's
doing civil legal work, not criminal legal work. I object, but
okay, sustained. We have host of the podcast Detroit Black and White joining us again, Adolph Mongo from Alfresco. He is outdoors. We also have labor and community activist Barb Ingalls, veteran journalist Nancy Derringer, and of course, co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel. So, welcome back, Bill. I saw that you had checked out just momentarily, or maybe that was a fish hack. I'm not sure. Well, breaking news, the Supreme Court has another decision. It's going to have to pick up the pace because next week is it for some serious cases that have to come down the pike, not the least of which being the Trump immunity case, which they're slow walking, it seems. But the Supreme Court has upheld the federal gun ban for those who are under a domestic violence restraining order. It seems as though Chief Justice John Roberts has said that since the very early inception of this republic, physical danger is, of course, of paramount need, and the Second Amendment apparently has its limitations. Funny, it doesn't have them in any other situation that might include physical harm, but I guess there is something to be said about that. Thoughts about the Supreme Court?
What was the vote on that, by the way?
Gosh, you know what?
Hold on,
I
I'm
think we
looking
need to go ahead
real
and
fast
look that up.
here. And hang on a second.
Doesn't anyone have Siri?
Yeah. Right.
I'm scanning the.
Anyways,
the NYT
well,
spread.
while we're
Right.
waiting, let's have the lawyers weigh in.
I'm glad-
8-1, by the way. It's 8-1.
8-1. Who's the dissent?
Well,
guess what?
Thomas.
Of course.
yeah. All right. Okay. Anyways.
Bought and
Any
paid
thoughts
for,
about
Tommy.
Yeah.
So, anyways, anybody have an opinion on that?
Anyone have an opinion on the opinion?
Well, I have an opinion on only one thing, having not read anything, and that is Thomas. Thomas is a complete prostitute. Anybody who would say, I mean, he apparently is even more conservative on this issue than Alito. This is absurd. The idea that we cannot ban guns for people who have orders on domestic violence, which, by the way, any attorney will tell any client who comes in that order, that protective order, will not stop somebody from doing something terrible. It certainly has never stopped the bullet, but it's at least a step. And the idea that someone would vote against it tells you something about somebody who gets $200 million in gifts.
By the way, let the record reflect that today, June 21st, the summer solstice, our very own Bill Seikaly name-checked lyrics from Sir Mix-a-Lot's Baby Got Back when he said that Clarence Thomas is a total prostitute. Anyways, Nancy.
Well, okay. We just had a mass shooting last weekend in the Detroit area, Rochester Hills. This was a splash pad shooting. It looked like it was another case where we have a man with severe mental illness, some sort of paranoia, and no fewer than a dozen guns. And I see that even Pete Lucido in Macomb County is now talking about potentially charging his mother, depending on what the investigation turns up, for not tipping off law enforcement that the guy was dangerous, needed to be disarmed. Now, of course, Caitlin Buss at the Detroit News worries that we're on a slippery slope, that, that Crumbly's open Pandora's box. I believe that's her actual. And, I think it's this. We are living in an insane environment. If we cannot even, as our last commenter just said, if we can't even take the simplest steps to disarm people who simply should not own weapons. And, this domestic violence is a big one. I mean, every woman knows that. Look at that. I got a little thing there.
Wow.
Anyway,
You got magic
another one.
Where's the balloons this time?
Yeah, I need some balloons. Exactly. There must be some kind of Anyway, the domestic violence. Every woman who knows anything about domestic violence knows that is a very dangerous thing to do, to leave a man who is abusing you and who owns a gun, because there are thousands and thousands of women who have been killed by their domestic partners, their husbands, their boyfriends, whatever. And so, this is just, it's, if you want to beat your woman badly enough that she has to get a protective order against you, it's time for you to give up your guns. If you live with somebody with that kind of paranoid mental illness who's walking around waving a gun in the house, talking about how the government is spying on your phone, it's time to make a phone call to the police. It's, and because the result, as we saw last weekend, is 9 people shot at a park, little kids too, a splash pad, which is what
actually there were three mass shootings in the Detroit area this weekend. 3. Yeah, there was one in Lakewood Village and there was one in Detroit.
That's right. There you go.
I say, look, if you drive your son to the 7-Eleven and he's got a gun and he's going to rob it, you're an accessory to the crime. If your son has mental health issues and he has a shitload of guns around and he's living in your house and you allow that, and for some reason it's like the Crumblies people think, give the kid a gun, maybe it'll calm him down a little bit. What we're saying is, the bus from the Detroit News is saying, oh my God, people are going to have to be responsible when they're an accessory to a crime.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what's happening here, and it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
So how much of this do you see as being part of the Crumbly effect, so to speak, where prosecutors now are going to go after household members and charge them with involuntary manslaughter?
Well, Pete Lucido is no pinko swish. This is. I mean, he's as right. He's as right wing as they come. I think he also knows that he's in an elected position, and that this is going to be probably more popular than not popular, even in Macomb County. And
for anybody who is old enough to remember the world before the Stonewall riots and the Cold War, you can look up those terms that Nancy used. Go ahead, Bill.
I have a slightly different perspective on Pete. First of all, he's not going to charge this woman. The reason he's not going to charge this woman, if you listen to his interview on this, he said it. The statute does not have a mandatory reporting requirement. So the fact that there is this law allows somebody to report somebody with a mental illness, red flag, but doesn't require that they do it. And therefore he's going to say, oh boy, I would have loved to charge her because he wants the votes, because I agree with Nancy on that. But he's not going to do it because it's not there's no mandatory reporting. Therefore, she didn't violate the statute. But I want to say what Steve Fishman would have said if he were here. When the government doesn't do it, you open the civil court system up and allow us to get it done. And that's how you make change. You want to solve the gun problem in America? You get rid of these laws that provide immunity for gun manufacturers. We'll take care of that gun problem. I guarantee it.
That's
Amen.
good.
Mongo.
So Bill mentioned, Bill mentioned that there were 3 shootings over the weekend. There was Rochester Hills, which got national attention. There was one in Lathrop Village where there were 6 young people who were shot, including 2 critically, and then there was one in Detroit.
Now there's a mass shooting in Detroit every weekend. Not just one.
Have we
two, three.
become desensitized to that? I mean, is race playing a factor in the coverage?
Of course it is, because if you look at what they did out in Oxford, with 4 or 5 students getting shot, dying because the school administrators gave this guy a free pass. If Crumley's name was Jamal, he would have been kicked out of school. They would have took his book bag, and we wouldn't have had people dying. We wouldn't have had a trial. It is always, you say it's not about race, it's about race. So now the mayhem is moved across 8 Mile Road into the suburbs, and everybody's feeling the pinch. So they want to give everybody a gun. This is what you're gonna get.
Well, I mean, race took a different dimension this weekend when former President Donald Trump came to the Motor City to, it seems, court the black vote. In fact, I believe, Allan, we have a video.
We have more than one video. Here's the initial.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and it is my privilege to introduce to you the 45th and soon to be the 47th President of the United States.
And then we also, do we want to play? Oh, Bill has, by the way, found a photo. It's not Rudy Giuliani, but here's a picture of the church. It's like, oops.
Where he's soliciting all the black votes. Right? Right. Those were the people yelling Trump, Trump, Trump in the first video.
Okay. Yeah. And here we have also the Trump voters interviewed by Myron Watkins, our videographer, who is happened to be out there.
Phenomenal for black voting. Absolutely. And there was things I wanted to talk to him about, because I'm a truck driver for 16 years, and I see where the supply chains are breaking down, but obviously I didn't get a chance to do that.
Absolutely. He was good for black folks when he was best friends with Jesse Jackson back in the day.
Absolutely. Especially compared to Biden. I mean, Biden ain't even, I don't even know if he can even think on his own.
Wasn't he friends with Don King? Was it Jesse Jackson?
Was that I think that was a hat that had red hair attached to it.
And listen, that was a bunch of bullshit, disinformation. But Trump is good at playing those kind of games. As I told you, Allan, when I worked for Coleman Young, it would have never happened. Donald Trump wouldn't have came into Detroit. He picked on a church that had about 10 people that attended. The preacher needed some money, And here we are. And if you look at the audience, they went and got every racist, bigot, and filled the church with it. So that's what we have. We need to stop reporting that the black folks is going to follow Donald Trump. He's not the Pied Piper, and we're not rats.
Yeah.
All right. So let me ask. Yeah, Nancy.
I just want to say that it's a credit. It's a great credit to the people of Detroit that these folks were able. And this wasn't just this church event. It was also the Turning Point USA convention down at the Huntington Place, the former Cobo, and also Nick Fuentes, open and outspoken racist and anti-Semite, who likes to. He's like one of those cattle egrets that likes to hang out in a herd and pick grain out of the cattle's shit. That's him with these other larger, more respectable conservative groups. But the fact that all of these people were able to come into a city as majority black as this one and not get their asses kicked, I think is it really says something good about the people of Detroit. And it's funny because just a few days ago, Ken Coleman, who's a local writer and journalist, he tweets daily about Black history in Detroit, and he surfaced this quote from 1980 from the late but unforgettable Ken Cockrell, who said on this day in 1980, Ken Cockrell urges his colleagues on the Detroit City Council to approve a parade permit for the Ku Klux Klan. Let them march, and then let's get a group of neighborhood people out there and kick their ass. So, the fact that these people didn't get the Ken Cockrell treatment, I think is, they should be going home saying we were all wrong about Detroit. These people are fantastic, because they were.
Well, Fuentes has immunity, Nancy, because remember, he took Kanye West to dinner at Mar-a-Lago with him.
There we go. So
so he wasn't going to get touched in Detroit. But by the way, for the rest of you, Nancy, mentioning an egret, I mean, that's the most classist thing that you've ever said. I mean, Bill, you and she must see egrets all over Grosse Pointe. All we've got is a bunch of Canadian geese. But anyway. Canada geese, sorry. No, actually, they showed me their papers, so they're really Canadian when they fly. So, Adolph, I've got a question for you. I mean, do you think that it would have been a better move for Trump to bring Tim Scott in for the optics? Because, I mean, he's dangling this idea of Tim Scott being his vice presidential choice. Or is that ship sailed and he's looking to somebody else now?
All of it's bullshit. The only black Republicans that they want is self-hating folks who's going to come in here and trash affirmative action. Juneteenth is a bullshit holiday. Those kind of black folk that they want. And you know what? Anybody black, I don't care, that want to vote for Trump is like a Jew in Nazi Germany talking about their Nazi and a member of the Nazi party. Because this guy is dangerous. He's a bigot. He's a racist. He knows how to play the game. And what I was pissed about is that the Democrats are sat here and says, "Oh, he can come in." And I disagree with you, Nancy. Somebody should have kicked them in the ass at that church. Because if we'd have had 500 black folks to go into Grosse Pointe in a church, the SWAT team would have been out there with firepower. No. Listen,
they should have had
if anybody who's listening doesn't believe what Adolph just said, there's a transcript of his speech in Huntington Place online, and it is terrifying.
Fuentes
Trump's.
Trump, yeah,
Trump's. I know. The guy he was terrifying. If anybody who doesn't believe he's a bigot, they just need to read this transcript. If anybody doesn't believe that he supports guys like Fuentes, they need to do is read this transcript. I mean, you got to mush through it because there are sections of it that are, for all he claims about Biden having cognitive issues, there are minutes in which you can't understand anything Trump is saying.
Yeah.
But it erases any doubt about Adolph's position. The guy is a bigot. The guy's a racist, and he doesn't believe in democracy. Other than that, he's probably a great candidate.
Yeah, he's at the church. He was teasing, and who introduced him was Representative Byron Ronalds, who's a black congressman from Florida.
Byron Donalds, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, and he is saying, hey, maybe he'd make a great vice president, don't you think, to the crowd? And they're like, he teases. He's not going to pick a black running mate. He's a racist. I'm sorry, he's not. He's going to try to figure out a way how to use them to get black votes, but he's not. He's going to pick that J.D. Vance in all likelihood, somebody like him who's
it
really.
Won't be a woman either.
Yeah, it won't be a woman. It certainly won't be Carrie Lake.
And he thinks that the only people he needs to surround himself in the black community is so-called rappers. They're like his stormtroopers in the black community. We're going to send the rappers out. We got Kanye West. We got all these folks that, whatever, 5-10 minute fame that they want. They're hoping that he get reelected.
That's from the church.
Yes.
I think this is ZZ whatever. These guys.
Nobody never heard of these folks. Listen, they were in a jackleg preacher. Listen, a snake oil salesman. He got 10 people in the church, and he needed a couple of dollars. They gave him a couple of dollars. It wasn't a big movement. Even when he went to the Bronx, over half of the people there, they came from out of state. We need to get it right, and the media is not reporting it right. This guy is a charlatan.
I think he'll roll out Vanilla Ice in the October surprise. So that's my prediction. Well, I mean, at the same time, this Turning Point USA circus was in town at Huntington Place, put together the oxymoronic brainchild of Charlie Kirk. And you had Marjorie Taylor Greene, and you had Matt Gaetz, and really
Alex
all
Jones
of them.
even showed up. That piece of slimy shit.
Oh my God!
Jesus.
What a
Alex Jones was also there. What do you think about this? What about this idea that they're coming into what are generally considered to be metropolitan areas in the Midwest that are blue states, or at least blue cities? Large communities of people of color. I mean, is this just being brazen, or did they get a good rate at
good politics? Good politics. When I was knocking on doors on campaigns, and we saw a yard sign in somebody's yard that was for our opponent, we knocked on that door. Because sometimes you can convince people to change their mind, or they tell you, oh, my son put that in the yard. I'm not really for that person. It's a good move. Going to the belly of the beast. They're going to make Biden spend money in those communities. The Democrats always took the black vote for granted. They didn't have to spend as much money. But now they're in a panic mode. We're not going to get 80, 95% of the vote. We're only looking at 60, so they're going to have to spend the resources, and that resources, Democrats had it. We was going to spend it outside of the city. Now they're going to have to spend a lot of that money in the city. So it's a good move on the Republican part.
But I think it's also
that's not my flag. That's my wife's flag.
I think it's a good reminder. I don't see it as a bad thing for the Democrats. It's a reminder. Hey, don't take Detroit for granted. Hillary did, and I think it's a reminder. Hey, we got to get out there. We got to get to the churches. We've got to do some of the things that we haven't been doing. Instead of trying to get votes, in northern Michigan, maybe there's a rich pool of votes in urban areas. So,
but you got young folks, you got young black people saying they're not voting for Biden. and they're thinking about voting for Trump. I talk to them every day.
Yeah, and why? What do they see Trump as? What's the appeal?
They buying into the narrative that everything is fucked up in this country, and it's because of Biden. Yep. They might owe, even though Biden got rid of a lot of student debt and people that profited from it, still, I don't like Biden. He's too old. They buying the bullshit. Mm-hmm. And the Democrats haven't been able to counter with Trump is a psycho, a maniac. And
listen, I think that there's another reason. I think there's another reason, and I think it's a more important reason for Trump about why he comes into cities like Detroit. What happens when he comes into the, as you said, the belly of the beast? Every network is covering it. Right. And I think that goes exactly what Adolph was saying. People are buying the narrative because the narrative just gets repeated and repeated and repeated on network television all the time.
Listen, people believe George Washington didn't tell a lie because they repeated it over and over and over again. And people believe that shit.
The Free Press headline on this conference was Trump courts black vote, not, racist circus comes to town, takes over black church. It was just like Trump courts black vote. Oh, that's very fair. That's very objective. And it's like,
but it was also for it was for the rest of the state too, because Republicans all over the state went, look, he's not a racist. He went into the city and he went to Detroit. He went to Detroit. Exactly. I mean, there was nobody, people in the city were like, right.
That's why there should have been
he bought his stormtroopers with him. They filled the church. They filled Huntington Place. He had his cadre of stormtroopers with him. So you know what? We need to write the real narrative, and we had nobody. The media buys into that shit. If this was Barack Obama with 80 felonies, raping a woman and doing all the things that Trump, you think he could still run for president?
No.
Hell no.
Fuentes stood, they kicked him out of the Huntington Place conference, and he stood on one of those concrete abutments outside Huntington Place or by the Pontchartrain Hotel, and he spoke, he freestyled to a bunch of people who were standing around listening to him, talking about how great Henry Ford was because he was such a violent anti-Semite. And, the fact that didn't get any coverage, I'm flabbergasted. But
I saw the clip of that, and it's like, this is terrifying. These guys in their horrible fitting suits. Mm-hmm. They borrowed suits to go to this thing to look legitimate, and it was just this terrifying group of guys that you see. They all wear like too small suits, so it looks like jacked. And then they all have the same haircut and the same beard. It's just like,
sometimes the mainstream newspapers try to ignore the vile stuff that people should be reading. When I was sent, and I've said this before, when I was at the Washington Post, they sent me to a neo-Nazi rally in front of the Israeli embassy, and they were chanting, freedom for Palestine, a rope for every Finkelstein. And I included that in the story, and the editor said, oh, no, we can't put that in there. And I go, why not? She goes, that's inflammatory. I said, you sent me to a neo-Nazi rally. What do you expect? We went at it for 10 minutes. I finally gave up, but let's
meet on the marketplace of ideas.
Yeah, I said, people need to know what jerks they are, please. And the paper sanitized so much shit.
Allan, those lyrics might have been copyrighted, and unless you can go ahead and verify. So by the way, Nancy, if you could, anytime you're planning on using the falsetto voice, if you could use your finger and be Tony from The Shining, that would be really helpful so that we can tell the difference. Yeah. So I don't want to get too much into cynicism this early in the solstice, but President Biden has granted legal status for 500,000 migrant spouses of U.S. citizens, putting them on a pathway to possible citizenship. Some of the requirements, of course, are that they have been living in continuous presence in the United States for up to 10 years, that they didn't commit any crimes. And while some might be typecasting this as a form of amnesty, it seems as though it is a pathway toward some kind of legitimization. Is this, and Barb, I saw that you're nodding your head to this, notwithstanding the fact that it certainly could help a good number of people out. But what about the idea, though, that it is a compromise position? I mean, it's simply going ahead and providing one very small niche of the population. I mean, after all, these are spouses of U.S. citizens, but it's being done as a hat tip to those in the Democratic Party who are upset that he's not doing more to reform immigration.
Of course, it's a compromise. But that's okay if it helps anybody. I mean, this is the only way you get anything moving forward. This is going to help like spouses of military. You know, this is going to help people that you know go to Europe or go to countries, fall in love, come back, and no one's doing anything undercover. No one's stealing any jobs. You know, this
like
is just
recognize Americans as Americans, which is what these people
exactly.
are. Yeah.
Now,
I mean,
Trump,
look at this. The reason that this is such a good move, in my opinion, I mean, I think it's probably a good move politically, but the reason it's such a good move is the only step that is being eliminated here is the need for the person to leave the country before they come back in. Remember that if you're married to an American citizen, you have a right to come to this country. You have a right to get a green card. Mm-hmm. That's an absolute right under the act, but because they are so strident, the Republicans don't want to create this exception. They want to force the person to go out of the country and then create roadblocks for them coming back into the country. This particular action that Biden took should be a nothing burger. It shouldn't have been able to make the news.
Yeah, and I think it's really funny in kind of a bleakly funny way that when Trump came up with finally a decent idea, it's like the monkeys finally typed Hamlet, in the room with all the typewriters, which was to give a green card to every college graduate, every foreign-born college graduate. He immediately had to walk it back. It's like, oh no, we're only going to give it to the most qualified, heavily vetted, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, you dumb shit. It's like, you had the right idea in the first place. It's like, we need educated workers here. We need educated people who want to be Americans. Let them in, for Christ's sake.
Can we ask Michael Pappas to tell us whether or not the green card came before they got married or after they got married?
I think it was after.
I think it's probably after. Nancy, yeah, this might be sacrilegious, Nancy, in the land of the bard, but I don't think Shakespeare wrote all his plays, so the monkeys might have actually had something to do with it. Alan.
I was going to say that Trump, that Trump has now just announced that he thinks that any foreign person who gets a degree in the U.S. should get a green card, any kind of degree, whether it's an associate degree or graduate degree. So I think he's trying to get in on that. Why don't we take a break for a little?
Just say that? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Did you? Okay, I'm sorry. I've been trying to juggle all these things. I apologize.
It's not like he listens to us, Nancy.
No. We got some noise issues and
I understand.
Little stuff going on there. But anyways, let me play this commercial.
What's on your mind? What are the issues facing you and your families today? Before we ask for your vote, Alyssa Slotkin wants to hear about your concerns. Democrat Alyssa Slotkin is running for U.S. Senate, and she wants to have a real conversation about your issues. Is it support for our small businesses, funding for our schools, good-paying jobs, or opportunities for our youth? Alyssa is already building a campaign around listening. It's how she shapes her agenda in Congress. And why Alyssa's already been endorsed by small business owners, pastors, and leaders from our community. We know too many campaigns come to us right before the election and ask for our vote. That's not Alyssa. She has a reputation for listening and delivering. And this is your chance to help shape the agenda in Washington. Make your voice heard. Go to alyssaslotkin.org/community. Because in this campaign, your ideas come first.
I'm Alyssa Slotkin, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Slotkin for Michigan.
Without Project Clean Slate, there is no telling where I would be right now.
It gave him back his life, because once he got the felony, it seemed like life was over.
Being unemployed, being depressed, being a burden. Project Clean Slate helped wipe those things away. I can't say thank you enough. I am now able to work for a reputable airline. Detroit had my back, all because I live in Detroit.
All right.
Wow, a brand new commercial. Excellent. Well, so one of the things that I saw last week after the president announced this executive order on immigration was the political rhetoric, especially that on some of the local radio stations. And I mean, just virulently anti-immigrant, but also very racist, complaining that this was a way for him to get the Hispanics into the country. I did a little bit of research, and actually, here's the quiz question for you. From what country is the majority population that is actually here illegally?
That's a good question.
Venezuela.
I think everyone thinks, yeah.
We got one to vote for Venezuela.
Mexico. Else? Everyone thinks Mexico.
It is Canada.
Wow.
It is Canada. And in fact, most of the people who will benefit from this, other than, as Barb rightly pointed out, military spouses, are people from Europe and countries that have visa waiver abilities with the United States. They simply overstay their visas.
I see.
They have entered the United States legally. They are not what are called EWIs, entry without inspection. They just, because they don't have a visa stamp oftentimes, because they don't need a visa, they just simply stay longer than they were supposed to. Sometimes they get married. Sometimes they spend their entire lives here. So it's just interesting to see how this issue has been framed. I think, did we lose Adolph?
Adolph just.
It's well, you know that. Well, you know that stampede of Norwegians that are responding to Trump's mating call, saying that those are the kinds of immigrants that we want coming here. So
have you ever gone to Boston? Have you ever gone to a bar in Boston? Everybody's Irish. Everybody's Irish in those places. There's so many. Millions.
Barb, next time you go, you should go. There's this bar where everybody knows your name. So,
I've been there. So disappointing.
So, speaking of the need for Canada and the United States to, link up, it looks like they finally have in a new way. The Gordie Howe International Bridge has finally linked, and I haven't been this happy since the Apollo and Soyuz space stations back in 1975 did. Maybe we'll finally thaw our relations with Canada over this peace and trust building move. How do you feel about this?
The worst deal the American government has ever made. The Michigan government, state of Michigan's ever made.
Worst deal?
Worst.
How do you?
Because Canada agreed to fund it in exchange for the Canadians getting all the tolls until the debt's paid off.
Okay.
Watch and see what happens.
Okay. It'll be interesting. I look forward to riding my bicycle.
Wait a minute, Bill. Will we be alive long enough to see what happens?
No, I certainly won't be. Who's the youngest on Barb? Who's the youngest on here? Barb, Joe,
Saeed.
I'm 68.
Yeah, Saeed clearly.
Saeed.
Yeah, Saeed.
Yeah, by a mile.
This was a bad deal made for the wrong reasons, but. Nobody wanted to hear that. Nobody's ever heard it. Adolph was around, I know.
Well, I was a consultant for Matty Maroon. They hated Matty Maroon so much that they just gave everything to the Canadians because everybody was getting paid on the Canadian side, from Jim Blanchard, Grant Holmes' husband, etc. So yes. They didn't like the Ambassador Bridge Company. Because the original deal was the bridge company was supposed to be the management company for the new bridge. And they reneged on them. Granholm and them went another way. And it's supposed to have been built downriver and not in Detroit. So it's all kind of bullshit on that bridge. So here we are.
It's a terrible financial deal for the state of Michigan. It's a
Yes.
Terrible financial deal for the American government, but.
So Bill, you might know this, but the Suez Canal was built in 1869. The debt on the Suez Canal wasn't repaid until 1956.
Wow.
So we just need to be patient. Michael, you are too kind, or you need a far higher resolution monitor. I'm actually a little over twice that age. I'm 57, but thank you so much. It must be the snark and the irreverence.
We're gonna change.
I thought there was perhaps some money going back and forth for that one. But I wasn't going to say anything.
Well, again, the amount I'd have to repay Michael for that compliment will be past my lifetime. So there you go. Well,
6 boomers and an Xer. That's what we should call ourselves. Like, you know, the new show. Six boomers blather. But go ahead.
I don't know. As long as you don't include what was that crazy family with the 19 kids with Jim Bob as the dad, the Duggars?
Oh, Duggars.
Yeah. Glad they're in the rearview mirror. Well, closer to home, we also have the proceedings of the Sam Woll trial. Sam Woll, of course, a very prominent member of the Jewish community. She was the director of the downtown synagogue. She was rather brutally murdered last October. Her murder trial is underway, and most recently, her ex-boyfriend testified because he was initially a person of interest in the investigation. Allan, do you have any updates on the case?
I do. You know, I've been watching as much as I can. You know, basically, the defense attorney is doing a good job of trying to create doubt. He's trying to, you know, with the ex-boyfriend. Basically, what happened was they dated. They broke up, I think, a month or two before the murder. It was amicable, supposedly, and so he had depression issues, and they upped his meds. And so the one he worked for Stryker, and he was in Kalamazoo. They asked him to come out there for a little while and work there. So he was living out of a hotel. He took double the meds and then he hit about 4 times on the vape, and he started having a panic attack. He started getting paranoid about work, if he was going to be okay, you know, if this and that. And then suddenly he started thinking, maybe I killed, he goes, I don't remember, but maybe I had something to do with the death of my ex-girlfriend. He called in a panic. He called 911. He was sitting in the car. He was screaming. He was crying. They came out there. What's going on? I think I might have killed my girlfriend. And then he says, but I don't remember anything. Well, talked to a psychiatrist afterwards. And they had some delusional panic, whatever that was going on. And so they arrested him. They held him for 4 or 5 days, and nobody could figure out what was going on. Why were they not charging him? Well, they couldn't find anything, and they came to the conclusion that he was being delusional at the moment and had a panic attack. So he's been on the stand. The attorney has been grilling him and trying to suggest it must have been you. They're trying to say there were 8 stab wounds. They were all in the upper part of the body. That 8 stab wounds suggests a crime of passion, that it must have been him. I think the prosecution has established pretty clearly that it's not him. But the problem I see with the case right now is that, you know, if they go by her phone shuts off at 1:35. That's the last time they show any activity. Then her body's found at 6:30 a.m. So sometime between then. Well, at 4:20 a.m., the sensors from ADT show movement. Then at 4:24 a.m., there's a camera that picks up the defendant in Greektown. So if they're going by that timeline, you know, so first the defense suggests, well, if it was at 4:20, how in the hell could he have run across the freeway and been in Greektown by 4:24 or 4:23 a.m.? But then he has no explanation for how he has blood spots on a coat that went through the washing machine already, and how there are blood spots on his backpack. So early during the opening statements, the defense tries to say, well, look, as soon as my client was arrested, he said, I saw the body and he went to look at it, and touched it and then realized she was dead and ran off. So that's how he got the little, spots of blood. But, then they objected, the prosecution objected, and the judge told the jury, strike that. So the question becomes, if you weren't around the body at all, if you were at Greektown, then how in the hell did you get blood? It's more if you were there at the time of the crime. The problem is they've had all these experts come on with the blood splatter and fingerprints. They did not have good enough prints except for hers to lift anything. They don't have any video of him coming in and out. And so I don't know, it's a complicated case,
Well, if the Detroit police, they have railroaded so many people in the city of Detroit, if that was somebody else who would have confessed and said, I think I killed my girlfriend, they would not have looked for anybody else. He would have been sitting up there in the Wayne County jail right now. This guy got the benefit of the doubt. I'm not saying he killed her, but they have jailed people on less.
Yeah.
And for 5 days, the police wouldn't tell you who they had. Everybody else, they flash their picture and their name. So listen, that jury, it might be a hung jury. I don't know. It's not a slam dunk.
It's not a slam dunk. I mean, there are questions. He does have blood. So, like I say, if he's saying I was not anywhere near there, then there's no way you have fucking blood on your. I
mean, when people find a body on the ground, do they splash around in the blood? I mean, it's my experience that if you see a body lying on the ground, you might touch it, you might check for a pulse. But
if he was gonna go through her pockets or her purse or whatever, this guy's a street guy. This guy's a street guy. So if he sees somebody, he's a crime of opportunity.
I see.
Well, that's the other argument that they say, that he entered the house because it was a crime of opportunity. But the defense says, well, how come nothing was stolen? Her purse was there, her laptop was there, her cell phone was there. It appears that nothing was taken. So how could it be, if he's looking for a crime of opportunity, that he broke in? But who knows the scenario where maybe he broke in and she attacked him, or he attacked her and then she fought back. But maybe it's not him, which is really scary if it's not him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Bill, Joel. I mean, I'm sorry, Joel, Bill. I don't want to sound like Billy Joel. Joel and Bill. What do you think? I mean, do you think that there's enough reasonable doubt here? I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, after the ex-boyfriend's testimony and all of this, there seems to be enough reasonable doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't followed the trial or haven't been there. I know as much as you guys do, but it appears that the defense lawyers do everything that he can to create reasonable doubt, and there may be reasonable doubt. It depends. I think the boyfriend is. I saw his testimony. He's a real neurotic, trouble guy. And I think that becomes apparent. He probably has this massive anxiety disorder, which is why he called the police on something that he didn't do. And that's actually not uncommon for people to do, have these massive anxiety disorders. They believe they did something when they didn't do it. And it's more of the fear of, my God, maybe I did it. I just can't distinguish reality. But having testimony from him and having him be a suspect certainly can create doubt. I think the timeline is difficult. I think the blood spots are hard to reconcile. But when you have those types of difficult issues and you have this muddied water, that would be reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
So if I remember correctly, the only thing I didn't hear Allan say is that I read some testimony that his phone establishes that he wasn't anywhere near the area of the boyfriend.
That's correct. Well, that's correct. But the defense is saying, oh, he's a smart guy. He's got a PhD from Michigan. He's a smart guy. Smart criminals keep their phones at home when they commit a crime. That was what he's trying to raise a doubt. Yeah.
I mean, look, I doubt that the guy's going to get a not guilty. But he
can get a hung jury. Yeah.
Hung jury. That's my view of it. And if he gets a hung jury, they're not going to prosecute him again, is my guess, unless there's some more evidence that comes out. Well, or unless it's an 11-1.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Adolph, about the idea about the police railroading people. I think there was another case, if I remember, that they fixated on one person, and 30 years later, we still haven't found out who killed Nicole Brown Simpson and the Goldman guy. So I see the dangers of that fixation happening all the time, and with that acquittal. Well,
well, I think in the Chandra Levy case, they focused on Congressman Khan did, and then they ended up finding a guy from El Salvador, although now there was a mistrial there, but so that case remains unsolved as well in the Chandra Levy case. So.
Also unsolved, that's right. Which, by the way, for those of you, Allan Lengel, when he was at the Washington Post, before he finally decided to come home, was doing some bang-up coverage of journal. I had no idea that was you, because I used to read the Washington Post.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we were 7 days a week, man. It was. I was out in California for 3 weeks.
When it was free.
The joke was that Condit was the one that arranged 9/11 because it finally got him off of page one.
That's funny because we just started having a bigger team covering Chandra Levy. At first it was just me and another person for quite a long time. Then we started bringing in the national desk, and then 9/11 came, and it was like,
Gary
that.
who? Chandra who? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, Nancy, I believe that headline was Gary was the conduit.
Sad. Gary's beneath you, sir.
Trust me, it's that British atmosphere here. So one last thing.
I think Michael's about to say that you might be 98 for that joke.
Well, if I was 98, then I would have very fond memories about this next person. Major League Baseball in the country lost a giant, pun fully intended. The Say Hey Kid, Willie Mays, who really was the star of the New York Giants, then the San Francisco Giants, and then finishing up his career with the New York Mets. Passed away this week at the age of 93, and I think we have video, Alan.
If you ask someone who's the best baseball player of all time, more often than not, the answer is going to be Willie Mays. Not just fans, but fellow Hall of Famers will tell you the same thing. In 2015, President Obama awarded Mays with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor.
All I can say is thank you, thank the guys that I've played with, and hope they had a good time playing with me.
I got to see him at a couple old timers games when I moved to America out at Shea Stadium, and man, always a twinkle in his eye, always a standing ovation. Anyone got any memories about Willie? No, Nancy.
I have no memories about Willie, but I do have last night when they played this game at the was it an old Negro Leagues field somewhere in. I don't know. This is where not being a sports fan hurts me. But
in Hamtramck?
No, not in Hamtramck. This is a national thing. But Reggie Jackson was interviewed, and I think it was in Birmingham because they were in Alabama, and Reggie Jackson was interviewed. And Reggie Jackson, who is not that old, he's an old man, but he's still, he's got all his marbles. He's very well spoken. And he started talking about what it was like for him. Thank you, the Birmingham Barons.
Thank you.
That he was what it was like for him to play in Alabama and to be in Alabama at that time, and it was shocking. He said they would walk into a restaurant and the manager would say that N-word doesn't eat here, and they would go to a hotel and the N-word can't come with you. And he said finally, the manager said, then we're not going anywhere, that we're not going to be able to take Reggie with us. And so the fact that Willie Mays prospered in a time when it was still very difficult for Black players to do so, I think is, says something about him. Although I read something in his obit that I thought was very funny, that he always wore a too small hat so that it would fly off when he was running because it made him look like he was even more just kind of funny.
Nancy, is that the impetus, Nancy, for the Reggie bar, so that Reggie Jackson always had a food supply any place he went?
I don't know.
So that clip that we showed, that behind the back catch, over the shoulder catch, was I think the 1954 World Series against the Cleveland Indians.
Right.
And
probably
then, of
the
course,
most remarkable outfield play in baseball history. I mean,
you know what, Bill? I would actually agree with you, except I saw this clip on YouTube of a ball girl, Spider-Man, climbing the wall to catch a foul ball. The most incredible thing I've ever seen.
Except that she wasn't part of the baseball game.
Right.
Very true. But as far as if you're saying, you mentioned something happening in the outfield. You mentioned like in the outfield, and yes, but no. Other than that, yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I think Allan, you were probably the last person out of all of us to go to a baseball game, because God knows when's the last time I've gone. And what's the feeling when people come up to the plate anymore? I mean, I don't see that sense of awe when it comes to baseball players anymore that you had in the era of a Willie Mays, in the era of a Sandy Koufax, in the era of Reggie Jackson.
Who are the legends? I mean, Miguel Cabrera was probably the last guy, and probably his last 3-4 years was just painful watching him play. I mean, used to go and see, I mean, when the Tigers had World Series worthy teams, like particularly, 68, Al Kaline, and, Bill Freehand and Norm Cash and all those guys. Willie Horton,
Denny McLain.
Yeah, Denny McLain, Mickey Lolich. There were so many great players, Gates Brown. But I think it's just not, I mean, particularly now, I mean, for Tiger fans, it's just so ho-hum. I mean, they're just trading up. The Toledo Mud Hen guys are coming back and forth. We're paying, to see minor league baseball really in Detroit, and the excitement is gone. It's like the basketball, in Detroit. I mean, who can get possibly excited about the basketball that's been happening? And it really I think
the guy who just got fired after 1 year and still has $68 million.
Yeah. A guy
that would be very exciting for me.
Yes. A guy who didn't want to coach, who wanted to stop coaching for now. They just basically bribed him into taking so much money that he finally said, okay, I'll do it, but his heart wasn't into it, and he just didn't do a good job.
But you know what else the problem is that there's a soccer, which is a great sport, which is fun to watch and exciting. Baseball is boring still. It's a slow game. You have spring football now that people are watching. You have, the Detroit has a great football club. So there's a whole bunch of sports that weren't really around when we were growing up.
It's
and now USA
and actually
Joel,
fun to play.
Joel, I generally agree with you.
USA
I generally agree with
now,
you, but you notice that cricket has become popular lately. And if you want to make baseball look exciting, follow a cricket game.
That's true. It's too expensive. It's too expensive to go.
You're on thin ice there, young man, Bill.
Park. It's too expensive to take your kids to the game. It's too expensive. My husband used to take our nephews to Tiger Stadium, and he had his whole thing where he would buy bleacher seats, and then he would take the kids and they would sneak into the other sections and then watch the games from all over the place. And they loved it. They loved baseball because they could afford it. I mean, even with the cheap seats, they could afford it. And it was a better thing. You could get a hot dog, you could get a beer, you could watch a game. And we went to a game this year, and the only reason that we went was because StubHub had a really cheap seat. And we took the bus down, so we didn't have to park. But how much is it cost to park down there? They price the game and they play to people who don't care. They're
look, the Illiches have, Chris Illich has not done a great job of acquisitions here in the team. I mean, I talked to Lynn Henning, who still writes baseball for the Detroit News. He says next year they'll have a much better team. But to me, baseball, I mean, particularly if you play a sport, then you can appreciate. Here are pitchers throwing 90, 95 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour, a rock with such accuracy. I mean, if I was pitching, I'd be hitting every batter. That they can, throw the ball and make it do all this magic, and that a player can hit the ball is such an incredible skill. That ball is coming. I went to a batting cage once where the ball was coming 50 miles an hour, and I had to bunt so I could connect with it. 100 miles an hour, 95 miles an hour. It's. I still appreciate the great skill, the great pitching, but in Detroit, it's hard to get excited about it. It's just the players are coming back and forth. They've got Torkelson down there, Badu, whatever. They're bringing them back, and they've got shit.
I want to go back to what Barb said, though, because I think Barb had a great point, and I think that it would have added to it. This, Barb, they're still making money. They price this out of the reach of the average person because it doesn't matter. Right. People are going to come in. These people are going to watch this on TV. Look at the first baseball games I ever went to. We had coaches who would take us to football games and basketball games. They get a group rate. We'd sit in the bleachers. There were terrible seats, but boy, it was the most exciting thing, and it made dedicated fans out of a bunch of kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't do that.
Yep. I think Barb was right, though. It's like, and every time that we've been to Comerica Park, it's been because we got a ticket through some corporate entity. I mean, there was, and because GM and Ford, they buy tons of seats and tickets, and they give them away to customers and suppliers and all that stuff. And not that we're a customer supplier of either of these, but you know what I'm talking about. But you're right. If we covered Congress the way we cover sports in this country, we might not be in as bad a shape as we are right now. I was, as you know, or don't know, and who would care, I swim for fitness. I'm a lap swimmer. So I was watching some of the Olympic trials that was on TV this week out of Indianapolis, where they put a giant pool in the Lucas Oil Stadium. And I was thinking, this would be awful. I mean, swim meets are awful anyway, but this would be doubly awful if you were sitting in a $200 seat trying to make sense of this. You don't have the underwater cameras. You don't have the color commentary. You don't have all these people who are explaining what's going on and why this is significant. You can't see the close-ups of the finishes. I just don't understand why. And I felt that the first time I watched a baseball game on a high-def television, I'm like, why would I want to be sitting out in 90-degree heat in Comerica right now when I could be sitting in this bar with a drink in front of me, enjoying it here? So there we go.
Exactly. Hey, so can we play a quick commercial, and then
we can. Before we do that, Nancy, you know what? I'm a lap swimmer too, and instead of the kick turn, I just swing around the pole to come back around. So there you go. Okay, Al.
Fellas, I'm new in town, and I've been here a couple times. I absolutely love your place, man. But I've got to ask you, if you can, I've heard that you're going to be shutting this place down.
I'm not proud of it, brother, but we're behind our property taxes. The county is all over us, man. I'm even afraid to even give them a call.
Well, we can't let it go, brother. I mean, we can't give up. There's got to be a GoFundMe campaign that we can run, even past the plate. Is there a forgiveness program or something that's out there?
Well, unfortunately, that's only for the big guys. No, actually, Wayne County has payment plans for everyone.
Are you for real?
Yes, it's a well-designed program. We want to help you save your business.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabri. If you have delinquent taxes on your home or business, contact our office, 313-224-5990, or visit our website, treasurer.waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Got it.
The first few times I watched that, I did not think that the actor who plays the barber is the same guy who was about to lose his house in the last commercial, but I'm absolutely sure it's the same guy now.
Absolutely.
I have a comment about this commercial. As a guy who has the same hairline as Eric, I will tell you, we generally don't go to barbers.
Adolph said it was raining on him, so he had a problem with his connection.
Bill, what's the probability that Eric's in both commercials? All right. Now let's go to the last segment then.
All right, let me get to that. All right.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
All right, and just for that, Bill, you get the first schmuck.
Well, I'm torn. I have a couple of schmucks. There's an abundance given what happened in Detroit this week, but one of our viewers said, "Can we talk about the roads and horrible infrastructure throughout Michigan?" I'm going to address that, and I'm going to make my schmuck of the week everybody who thought tax cuts instead of investing in infrastructure for the last 30 years was a good idea. Those are my schmucks of the week, because we're paying the price. We now have some money saved up and we're putting it in the roads, and you can't go anywhere in this area right now. Apparently MDOT actually came out with a story saying it's true. We're doing everything we can, and we're doing it all at one time. You can't get anywhere without hitting construction. And it's because we are so short-sighted. We want to have tax cuts, and we don't want to invest in our infrastructure. And this is what happens when we're that short-sighted.
Schmucks of a generation. That's what they.
Bill,
schmucks of a particular party as well, but
yeah.
Bill, if you want to avoid hitting construction, put your hands on the 10 and 2 position and just pay attention. You won't hit any pylons or anything. So
or pedestrians.
Yes, just from the one Xer, let me help you out on that one. Okay, Joel.
I'm gonna go with sexy back. I'm going with Justin Timberlake. Ooh. Had that one big martini apparently, and kind of messed up that world tour. But I think he's gonna press on. But Justin, come on, man. I know the Hamptons is the Hamptons. You're gonna get it on, but that one martini had.
Get a driver. Get a driver. Call an Uber.
Yeah, cry me a river, I guess is what he's saying.
Very good, Joel. Very good.
Yeah, well, I'm plagiarizing because everybody's been saying that, but he seems like a really good guy to me. I like Justin, but he was a schmuck. He made a bad decision, so.
Said no Brittany ever.
Yeah.
Okay. But a wonderful spears and arrows you flew his direction there, Joel. Okay. Okay, Barb.
This week, because Michigan Republicans never, ever let me down, Representative Barb Ingalls of Antrim Township would like to make AR-15s the state's official rifle, and has introduced a bill called HB 5792. Because other states have done it. Other states in the South, like, hang on a second, Alaska, Arizona, Indiana, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Missouri, Tennessee, Texas, of course, Utah, and West Virginia all have their own state rifle. So why not us?
Mozambique put the AK-47 on their flag. So there you go.
There we go. So that's not nuts at all.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's some great company.
Yeah.
I mean, if Angola does it, then we're going to have a real case of FOMO.
Well, they took it off. They took it off after a while, but that was what the freedom fighters used. So there you go.
There's something like 15 Republicans signed on to that too. So it wasn't just Brian.
Yeah.
Well, isn't it? What's the bird on the Ugandan flag? It's a crane. It's not an egret for anybody from Grosse Pointe, just to let you know. All right, Nancy.
Okay. I hope somebody's going to mention Representative Frisky. So I'm not going to. Yeah, but I will give it to this week to Kellyanne Conway, who after that ridiculous show out at the church in Detroit last weekend, went on Fox and said that Donald Trump had spoken in front of 8,000 people at a black church, and she loves alternative facts. She's told us this before, but I mean, there was maybe 200 people in that church, and at least half of them were white. It's like, give me a break. I mean, and nobody corrects her. Pardon me?
Majority of the people in that church were white.
That may be, but I mean, I'll be generous here. I'll give him 50%. But it was.
She doesn't go to legit news sources, so who's going to call her on it?
Well, right. I mean, she's only appearing on Fox. They don't do that kind of thing. Well, at least they only do it to Democrats. So there we go.
All right, Allan.
You know what? I have a 13-second video which is entertaining.
News says Joe Biden is back in the lead. Biden headquarters must be celebrating. We're ahead in the polls. Let's boogie, Joe. That's how it's supposed to be. Or not.
Anyways, Mine is the pastor Lorenzo Sewell, who invited Trump to his church, the 180, there on the far west side of Detroit, and also Representative Byron Donalds, the black congressman who introduced Trump at the church, and Trump is teasing and saying, "Hey, he'd make a great vice president. What do you think?" He ain't picking him. And so, Saeed, I'm going to defer to you. Are you going to mention the state lawmaker?
Do you want me to do it? Do you want me to get frisky for you there, Alan?
Yes, get frisky.
Okay. So, well, my schmuck of the week was going to be Timothy Mellon, the scion of the Mellon banking dynasty, for giving $50 million to Trump post-conviction. Interestingly enough, I mean, I think I should also indict every Supreme Court justice who was in the majority of Citizens United, including the opinion writer Anthony Kennedy, who, by the way, whose son Justin Kennedy was arranging for loans through Deutsche Bank for Trump. But anyways, Representative of Charlevoix, Republican State Representative Neil Frisky, was arrested, and I think he's still sitting in the pokey in Lansing for what looks like felony charges of brandishing a gun and possibly going ahead and firing it off when he was chasing an adult dancer near his condominium in Lansing. Representative Frisky, both apply equally well. It's a hardline conservative who puts faith and family at the heart of his campaign for re-election. Some of his dear and near issues are being pro-local control, really bothered by the border crisis, apparently, with, I don't know, what would that be, Livingston County? Government overreach, anti-abortion. He is pro-NRA, pro-Second Amendment, pro-senior, and pro-veteran. Apparently, his campaign issued a statement saying, quote, "As many of us know, Representative Frisky is always exercising his Second Amendment right," end quote.
Considered to be one of with a gun.
It's a right. It's a right in America.
And this is why we need red flag laws.
Reelected, it might be.
Well, he's unsurprisingly a member of the Farm Bureau's Michigan United Conservative Club, Right to Life, and the NRA, and also a member of the Freedom Caucus. I don't know how much more schmucky you can get than the very frisky Representative Neil Frisky.
I love the line. He loves to exercise his Second Amendment right.
Well, I want to know what else the adult dancer said he was exercising, but let's wait and see for the testimony, as I'm sure it'll verily come out. Listen, thank you everybody for another great episode of The Week That Was. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Phil Seikaly. Thank you, Barb Ingalls. Thank you, Nancy Derringer. And of course, thank you. And with the last word, as always, Allan Lengel. Oh, by the way, thank you, Adolph Mongo. Hope the rain doesn't get you down.
Drive home safely.
Thanks, everybody.
Cool.
Take care and see you next week.
Bye-bye.